including my dear wife, Mr. Speaker. We must send a statement, Mr. Speaker, that there should be fairness from this side, the minority side, Mr. Speaker. These names as tabled, Mr. Speaker, even if I will be the only one protesting, I want to go on record that I register my protestations against the list as presented, Mr. Speaker. And Mr. Speaker, we should walk the talk. If we are preaching fairness as a coalition, Mr. Speaker, we should preach fairness, Mr. Speaker. My coalition, ODM, Mr. Speaker, we have 14 elected senators. 6 nominated makes it 20. If you go to the Committee of National Security, Mr. Speaker, it has got 3 members of Jubilee. And Jubilee has 4 senators here. Where is equity there? Where? How can that be? Really, how can that be? Why not pick one Wiper, one ODM, one Jubilee? Mr. Speaker, I mean, how can we allow such an injustice to be coming from the side that should be keeping the government on check, Mr. Speaker? On sessional committees, Senator Mwaruma here, Mr. Speaker, has made us a passionate plea that because of institutional memory, he should be included in the sessional committee of CPAC. But his name is not there, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I want to urge the members of majority side, Mr. Speaker, to be persuaded on the interest of all senators sitting here. If there is fairness on the side of minority, join us to push for fairness. That's my appeal to you here. And we have done that before, Mr. Speaker. This matter should be given a bipartisan approach, Mr. Speaker. So that, Mr. Speaker, at the end of the day, Mr. Speaker, what we are passing here should reflect fairness, Mr. Speaker. And, Mr. Speaker, if you want to send a message to some of us from where we come from, Mr. Speaker, let us know today, Mr. Speaker. From the county of Kisii, the county of Nyamira, Mr. Speaker, our population allows us only to elect 2 senators. And we have produced 2 senators here. Do you want us to multiply through osmosis so that we have 4 senators from Kisii and Nyamira, Mr. Speaker? We have done the best that we can to support our coalition, Mr. Speaker. And in return, Mr. Speaker, we want to be treated fairly, Mr. Speaker. I want to see, Mr. Speaker, if the leader of minority from the other side is from my neighboring county of Siaya, if the whip is from my neighboring county of Migori, I want to also see that the people of Nyamira, people of Kisii, are also acknowledged. And I want to ask my leaders, Mr. Speaker, to listen to us, Mr. Speaker. When we have failed to listen before, the results have been disastrous, Mr. Speaker. When we have refused to listen before, the results have been disastrous. Mr. Speaker, I was in this house. Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker. When we refused
Senator Mugeni, try to wind up, kindly.
The final point I'm making, Mr. Speaker. I was in this house, Mr. Speaker, when Senator Wambua, Senator of Kitui, persuaded us to be fair to Senator Wetangula. We didn't listen. Mr. Speaker, as I conclude, Mr. Speaker, Mr. Speaker, I'm requesting, Mr. Speaker, that this House rejects these names. We go back, we adjourn, go to Kamkuji, Mr. Speaker. Our leaders listen to us. We present a list that is fair to all of us, Mr. Speaker, and that will give time to senators to discharge their functions, Mr. Speaker. So I reject, Mr. Speaker.
Okay, as you sit down, Senator Okongo Mugeni, you know you have mentioned several leaders here who will go far. Now, as you sit down also, maybe I think today you are guided by the Holy Spirit himself. Can you also mention others, including the Kaduri Murongi, whether you go far? Because maybe... yeah. Maybe continue consulting your spirits before I leave the seat. Then you also give me the blessings. Yes, let's now, Senator who has not spoken today at least, Senator Tobiko.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I rise to support the motion. And Mr. Speaker, also appreciate the House leadership on the good job that they have done. Mr. Speaker, and I am more than willing to serve in the capacities and in the committees that I have been allocated. But Mr. Speaker, even as we accept to serve the country at the positions given, Mr. Speaker, I have one or two observations to make, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, and I really, empathize with the members on the other side because they seem quite aggrieved, Mr. Speaker, and I believe we are doing well on the majority side, Mr. Speaker. But, Mr. Speaker, I have one or two observations. One, Mr. Speaker, that, and I wondered whether in the Senate, because I served in the National Assembly, so I don't know whether this is a rule in the Senate, that the women leaders, maybe by design, I don't know, by default or by whatever, that are not allowed to serve as chairpersons of committees, Mr. Speaker. And I was wondering, could it be because majority of us are nominated? And by all intents and purposes, Mr. Speaker, I thought when a member finds themselves on the floor of this House, Mr. Speaker...
Senator Perez Tobiko, this list I laid here, when I was proposing, I did not see any leadership of any committee member. And I'll be giving a direction on how the leadership, how members will proceed to get the leadership of the committees.
Okay, I can phrase. I can rephrase, Mr. Speaker. Let me say, Mr. Speaker, it will be good when chairpersons of committees are elected, that the good women leaders in this House are also given a chance, Mr. Speaker. But then, Mr. Speaker, there is another issue which I don't know whether it only affects myself or it affects some other members. Mr. Speaker, when you get people with various titles here, senior counsel, it didn't just come by the way. When you find a member who has a title of EGH, it didn't just come. You find a member CBS, it did not just come. And when we came for orientation, Mr. Speaker, we gave all the details to the Senate administration on our titles. And so I would want to see that my name is addressed in the proper manner with all the titles that I held, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, those were my observations. Thank you very much.
Proceed now, Senator Ososi Gonfrey. I want to remind you that we agreed, we made a ruling of 3 minutes each member.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I want to start by saying that committee system is key aspect of any parliament globally. And a lot of work in parliament is done in committees. And in fact, it's estimated that over 80% of parliamentary work happens within the committees. a plenary like this is about 20% of the work. So we would like the committees to be in place so that they can generate business for this House. Because, Mr. Speaker, you are well aware that for the few sessions we have been having, we have in most cases been discussing things which in my own view later on we realize that we would have spent that time discussing very substantive matters. So we expect the committees to be in place so that they can generate enough business for this House so that this House can be kept very busy. Mr. Speaker, from my experience in National Assembly, I realize that the committee is as good as the leadership of that committee. If the leadership we are going to elect is not competent enough or hard working, Mr. Speaker, we will have those committees not performing to the expectation. So I want to urge those who will get the opportunity to serve as chairpersons and vice chairpersons to ensure that they work extra hard and they deliver for their committees so that we have enough business to discuss. Coming back to the point raised by my friend and distinguished Senator for Kisii, I think he has raised very substantial points, Nyamira, very substantial issues which I'm sure the minority leadership will look into. And I'm sure, Mr. Speaker, when we'll be relooking at the membership of committees after those cabinet nominees have been vetted, we can use that opportunity to fix those issues that the distinguished senator was talking about. And I'm hoping that that is going to be very soon. For now, I propose that for the purpose of us making progress as a House and starting the work, we pass this motion, but take into account the issues that have been raised by Senator Mugeni, that they need quick intervention at the point of replacement of those who will be nominated as Cabinet Secretary. For those few remarks, I support the motion.
Senator Tsige, Wakili Hilali.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I also want to support the motion moved by the Majority Leader in setting up of the committees of the House. I would like to, from the very onset, state that I am aware, as the Honorable Distinguished Senator who just sat down stated, is that almost 80% of the business of the House is transacted at the committee. And what happens in the committee of the whole is what has been largely transacted in the committee session. I feel and I understand the situation that the distinguished senator from Nyamira, my learned senior counsel Okongo Mogeni, the comments that is made, the reservations that is made as regards the list that has been presented by the minority. And I know as a practitioner of law that an injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. From the part of the majority, I am aware that we have tried and practiced that which is just, and that is the basis upon which I am supporting this motion. I would only wish to encourage those who have been nominated to the various committees that the task ahead is not a small task. The business of the House entirely relies on their commitment to the cause. The business of the nation is entirely reliant on that which they will be doing. And I believe that the selection to the membership of the various committees have been put in consideration of the qualifications and the commitment of the members who have been selected. I wish to request them, as I undertake on my part, as one of the members who've been selected to a committee, to do the best in order to ensure that the business of the House is transacted with utmost good faith, so that we enhance the status of this House and we serve the people of Kenya. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Okay, next is Senator Olekina Ledama.
Mr. Speaker, I thank you for this opportunity. I'll try to be as brief as I can. The principal function of committees is to perform the task that this House seated here cannot be able to perform. Our job in committees is to be able to investigate, scrutinize government policies, particularly the executive, and in this House, our work is to be able to oversight on county governments. Mr. Speaker, my colleagues' sentiments notwithstanding, I know in leadership, being able to satisfy everyone's desire is something which is very, very challenging. So, Mr. Speaker, I come from a school of thoughts that believes that it is a little bit self-defeating when you come and you lie in your dirty linen out in public. Mr. Speaker, whatever challenges that we might have as a coalition, Mr. Speaker, those are teething problems which we understand. We deal with them when that time comes. And I think the key, most important thing, Mr. Speaker, where I come from, is if I have issues, and I think we've already been shown, we've already been told that, campaigns were over. But, it's a little bit hypocritical when some of us stand here and still continue campaigning, issuing threats. So, Mr. Speaker, I'd like to beseech this House to support this motion in its entirety. I think our standing orders are quite clear. And then when the time comes, and our standing orders are quite clear, parliamentary parties have the privilege to be able to nominate individuals to the House Business Committee for them to be considered in each committee. So, Mr. Speaker, time will come when we'll be reviewing this. There'll also be time when others will be de-whipped, just like I was de-whipped in the last parliament. So some of these things are normal, Mr. Speaker. Some of these things are normal. So, Mr. Speaker,
thank you,
I would like to beseech my colleague to let it rest. We move on and we start scrutinizing government policies. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Senator Mugatana.
Mr. Speaker, I wanted to make 2 quick points. The first one, these committees, Mr. Speaker, are going to consider motions and they are going to bring legislative proposals so that we can pass them in this House. Now, Mr. Speaker, the habit of government and the habit of institutions has been to treat legislation that is passed into law with utmost care, and they respect it. But on the other hand, Mr. Speaker, motions that are passed in this House are treated like mere persuasions. Mr. Speaker, in fact, when you today sent and committed statements to be considered by departmental committees, Mr. Speaker, those statements are going to be looked at in a very serious manner, and reports are going to be brought here with recommendation. Maybe we will approve a motion arising from those statements. Mr. Speaker, departments of government have not been giving motions or resolutions of this House the kind of respect that it requires. So, Mr. Speaker, I want to request the leadership of this House that we bring amendments to the Powers and Privileges Act. Any person who does not respect motions and resolutions of this House, Mr. Speaker, should be treated with penalties that are going to force them to obey the resolutions of this House. The final thing, Mr. Speaker, I am very conflicted. I heard my learned friend and classmate, Mr. Senator Okongo Mogeni from Nyamira, saying a lot of things, Mr. Speaker, and I share in his feelings. But Mr. Speaker, Standing Order number 199 advises us and directs that we have to accept the list in whole or reject the list in whole. We cannot maybe pick one or two senators when it is nominated as a list. So I'm conflicted, Mr. Speaker. The advice I would give is that we need to get doing the business of the House, and as they try to resolve their issues there, Mr. Speaker, I support. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. Let us have Senator Kamau Joseph Githuku. Ramu, Senator.
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me this opportunity to add my voice into this very important issue of our committee. Mr. Speaker, much has been said about how these committees operate. Mr. Speaker, I, as a new member, Mr. Speaker, I want to congratulate the Leader of Majority because of the way he has highlighted how the committees works. Mr. Speaker, I personally wish to support this motion, Mr. Speaker, that we pass and we make progress, because, Mr. Speaker, there are so many things that are lying behind, and we need, Mr. Speaker, to move forward. Mr. Speaker, I come from Lamu County, a county that, Mr. Speaker, has a lot of issues when it comes to security issues. And, Mr. Speaker, I want to say this, that I have been elected into different committees, and I will work, Mr. Speaker, to make sure that my people benefit out of the committees that have been actually, Mr. Speaker, been placed. One of the committees, Mr. Speaker, I have been kept into the Committee on Security. Mr. Speaker, every member here in this House, Mr. Speaker, knows that Lamu has been, have been for a very long time, been having the issues of security. And, Mr. Speaker, the only way that I will represent my members or my people in Lamu is only I being in that security committee. Mr. Speaker, education also, Mr. Speaker, has for a long time been left behind in Lamu. And, Mr. Speaker, this time around, we need to make sure that Lamu, Mr. Speaker, is kept in the limelight in terms of education. And that's why, Mr. Speaker, good people of Lamu sent me into this House, so that, Mr. Speaker, I can come and represent them accordingly, so that, Mr. Speaker, development can be realized in Lamu. And, Mr. Speaker, without fear, I want to state that I will work for them, and I will do as much as I can to make sure that I work for them, I work for my people. And, Mr. Speaker, I wish to support that these committees, Mr. Speaker, must and should be passed with an immediate effect, so that, Mr. Speaker, we make progress. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I support.
Senator William Cheptumo.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise to support this motion. And, Mr. Speaker, I want to say that if you look at the Standing Order 228, it is able to show us, Mr. Speaker, that these committees are very, very important in oversighting the executive in the manner in which the taxpayers' money is spent. And, Mr. Speaker, even areas of concern, Baringo County, Turkana County, and some of those counties, Mr. Speaker, where we have insecurity, where we have drought now, like in some areas in Northeastern, Mr. Speaker. These committees, Mr. Speaker, shall play a critical role in being able to stand with the public and be able to sensitize the government to respond to the situations that are affecting us, Mr. Speaker. And so, Mr. Speaker, I just want to say that the committees are important because it is the only way that this House shall be able to function and address the needs of our people. Mr. Speaker, today alone, 2 members of this House, Mr. Speaker, that is Honorable Wambua and the Senator Machakos, were able to raise 4 statements to the various committees, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, already we are late. These are issues which we need to address as soon as possible. And so, Mr. Speaker, I support that we need to pass this committee as soon as practicable. And Mr. Speaker, when I listened to my learned colleague, the senator from Kisii, he was able to clearly demonstrate, Mr. Speaker, the unfairness that is being practiced on the other side, Mr. Speaker. And though I don't want to really be part and parcel of that particular war, but Mr. Speaker, I want the country and these members to know that leadership, when there is fairness, Mr. Speaker, it begins from the top leadership. Mr. Speaker, Omoken was able to give a lot of praise to majority leader for the fairness in this side of the coalition. But Mr. Speaker, let me tell you and tell the House and the country that this is exactly the spirit of our leader in the Kenya coalition, that there should be fairness. He has actually come out clearly that when you are sharing these positions, the face of Kenya should be seen, regional balance. And Mr. Speaker, that is exactly what you see here. Where the problem is, on the other side, is not really the problem of the senators, it is the leadership in that area. My appeal is that they should learn to practice fairness, because, Mr. Speaker, if there is no fairness in our institutions of governance, then already we have problems in our country. And I think we need to learn more from this side, so that, Mr. Speaker, in future, you do what is right for the people of that your counties. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I support.
Next speaker is, Senator Mwaruma Jones Mwashushe.
Asante Mheshimiwa Spika kwa hii fursa umenipa ili kuchangia mchango wa huu mswada kuhusu hizi lista kwenda kwa kamati tofauti tofauti. Niseme la kwanza ni kwamba kazi nyingi ya bunge hufanywa katika kamati, ya kwamba hii kamati kuu ama nyumba huwa tunaleta report kutokana na kamati, na kazi ya bunge ama mbunge yoyote ni kutunga sheria, uangalizi na uwakilishi. Katika miaka yangu 5 ambayo nimefanya katika bunge la Senate, tumeweza kufanya kazi nyingi sana katika hizi kamati, na nashukuru zile kamati ambazo zilikuwa, tumeenda huko Taita Taveta na kamati 5 na tumefanya kazi nzuri sana kwa wale watu wananchi wa Taita Taveta na Kenya kwa ujumla. Ningependa kusema ya kwamba na kujihusisha na matamshi ya seneta wa Nyamira wakili Okongo Mogeni aliposema ya kwamba uongozi wetu ambao umewekwa uko na tashwishi, na alisema ya kwamba kwa upande wa walio wengi kwamba uongozi wao ni mzuri. Na nashukuru kiongozi wa walio wengi, Mheshimiwa Seneta wa Kericho, kijana mdogo, kijana mtanashati, na vile anavyoongoza ule upande. Nafikiri kwetu ni vizuri tuangalie vile uongozi walio wengi wanavyohudumia watu wao na katika fairness, na vile nimeona kwetu viongozi wetu wamejipalia makuu, wamejipa kamati nyingi nyingi, na kama kuna jina la kutumia nafikiri ni jina la ulafi, ya kwamba ukiuchaguliwa usijipatie wewe, patia wengine kwanza. Kwa hivyo mimi napenda kuwa na hii nyumba ni nyumba ya kumbukumbu, kusema ya kwamba viongozi wetu kama hivi ndio watatuongoza kwa miaka 5, basi Kenya kwanza iwe tayari kuongoza kwa miaka 10 inayokuja, kwa sababu huu ni uongozi ambao ni wa ulafi ni uongozi ambao haueleweki, ni uongozi ambao hakujipalia makuu. Asante Mheshimiwa Spika, nilikuwa napenda kusema hivi.
Senator Kenywa, what is it?
Bwana Spika, Waswahili wanasema mngala muwe na haki umpe. Katika lugha ya bunge naona si vizuri kuita mbunge mwenzako mlafi. Sioni ikiwa lugha nzuri kwake. Sioni Bwana Spika. Ndiposa Bwana Spika nimesema mngala muwe na haki umpe. Tafadhali.
Senator Medu.
Asante. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I rise to also support the motion as has been presented by the leader of majority. And first and foremost, I would wish to state that we are very ready. Personally, I'm very ready and willing to start off almost immediately. We've been told, because we are newcomers in this house, that a majority of the works of the Senate will be done at the committee level. So we are very happy that we'll be starting almost immediately. And I make my own commitment. I've been nominated to serve in the Committee of Lands, Natural Resources and Environment. And I thank my party for that nomination. And I'm very willing and ready to start off. Secondly, Mr. Speaker, I would also want to acknowledge the lauding that has been made by our colleagues from the other side of the coalition on the fairness that has been exhibited on our side. That even very young people from our coalition are getting very senior committees. I'm not saying that there are committees that are not senior to the others, but the reason why there are complaints from the other side is because they are feeling that their interests have not been taken care of. We were told to express our interests, and most of our interests have been taken care of. Finally, Mr. Speaker, as I want to sympathize with the Senator for Kisii, Senator Omogeni, for Nyamira, Senator Omogeni, and the Senator Mwashushe, I also want to ask them to be a little patient, because they are seasoned senators of this House. There are bigger things that are coming on the way. I am looking at Senator Omogeni, a 3-term senator, and probably he'll be coming in as a commissioner of the Parliamentary Service Commission, because there is I do not see whether he will be challenged. If you, in the very unlikely event that he does not get it, I'm sure Senator for Kisumu, Professor Ojenda, will get it, because he has been a commissioner in the past. And in the same breath and spirit, I would also want to remind my good brother, the Senator for Narok, Senator Damorakina, that as you celebrate today because you are able to snatch something from somebody, tomorrow something will be snatched from you, and you shall...
Yes, Senator Damorakina.
Mr. Speaker, this is a house of rules, and our standing orders dictate that we must respect each other. Mr. Speaker, it is a little bit ludicrous and actually childish, if I can use those words, for a colleague to be able to use derogative terms on the other. Those are very clear terms. Because, Mr. Speaker, if there is any point that I'm celebrating because, Mr. Speaker, I'm on a point of order. Mr. Speaker, just like you demanded, but I'm on a point of order. You know the rules, Majority Leader. Mr. Speaker, you will be given your time to cough all you want. Mr. Speaker,
let him finish.
Mr. Speaker, I am not being insulted, because whatever the senator said here was, I also took it as insult. So, Mr. Speaker, I think we have to, the way you demanded that my colleague, Senator Otsotsi, substantiate matters, I am requesting you, Mr. Speaker, to extend the same to the distinguished senator who spoke here before me. Sorry, I forgot his name. But I have a lot of respect because whatever he said, I considered it completely out of order.
Thank you, Senator Chalun Cheriot.
Mr. Speaker,
Majority Leader.
Mr. Speaker, we need your determination. Provided
language that is respectful towards a colleague. Senator Ledama wants to demand that he be addressed with decorum and respect, while at the same time calling a colleague senator childish. That is really unfortunate. Did you hear him, Mr. Speaker? And if he did say that, why are you permitting him, Mr. Speaker, to continue with his speech while being insultive to a colleague senator? He can choose to disagree with the contents of his speech. I think Senator Medu said Senator Ledama snatched something from a colleague. I want to believe that he's within the space, actually, of reality, because I know Senator Ledama 2 weeks ago was complaining all over on Twitter, on Facebook, how he wants to ditch ODM. Senator Sifuna had to give way for him to get the position that he has. So I think Senator Medu is right when he says that actually Senator Ledama Olekina snatched from Senator Sifuna something. But it is not right for him to say Senator Medu is childish.
Honorable senators, let us have respect for one another. You know, we are elected senators in this house. And therefore, let us kindly use parliamentary language as much as possible, practically possible. So, Senator Ledama Olekina, did you say the member for Nyandarua, Senator Medu, is childish?
When I rose to speak here, I rose on a point of order because I was aggrieved by the sentiments of my colleague. I think the first thing, Mr. Speaker, with all due respect, is for you to rule on that matter, then I can be able to adjudicate on the other issue. But as it is, Mr. Speaker, we have a matter that is yet to be determined. And our standing orders are quite clear. Mr. Speaker, Standing Order 98 is very clear.
If you did not say you did not or you did...
Mr. Speaker, what I said is that the utterances were childish. I never say that he's childish. I say the utterances. Okay, utterances. You cannot come here and say someone snatched something from another. It's simple English. Utterances were childish. That's what I said, Mr. Speaker.
But what he said is more polite than...
So that...
Yeah. So I want us, senators, please, I beg you again, let us conduct ourselves in a decorum way. You know, so many Kenyans are watching this space now. They are watching their TVs. Some TV channels are live. But then if senators, you know, before I joined the Senate, personally, I was very impressed by the way senators actually conducted themselves. But this time around, we are not doing so well. So far, we are not doing so well. Can you finish? Can you finish your time? 30 seconds.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I am sure from the conduct of both of us, you can be able to
snatching something from somebody.
No.
Maybe, you know, if you say something from somebody, just be direct what happened. Maybe it will be...
All right, Mr. Speaker. But the point that I was making is that from the conduct of both of us, you can be able to tell who is childish. I don't want to pursue that matter further. The only good word that can describe me can only be youthful. If it is childish, he can only be describing himself. Now, Mr. Speaker, as I want to go to the next point that I was making, the word snatched has been used just the other day by the leader of majority when he was describing the senator for Homa Bay. But that far from the point. The point that I was making is that the good senator for Narok took, or rather was awarded a position that was initially meant to be for the senator of Nairobi, which is just internal. Yeah. And he should not just celebrate because he got it from another person. He should not celebrate because
your time is up, Senator Medu.
Thank you.
Let us have Senator, the last one now, Senator Beatrice Akinyi Oyomo. Only members remember that we are joining this house at 5:30.
Thank you.
5:30 p.m.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. As I stake my position to contribute in this matter, I want to say from the onset that I support the list that has been provided in the House, on the floor by the majority leader and supported by the minority leader. I only wanted to put 2 points clear. I hear from the other side a mention of the word fairness. And I want to state in the House that the little arguments you hear from our coalition is just evidence of the democratic space that we enjoy in our coalition. Yes, I want to state from the onset that the democracy we have, Majority Leader Senator Methu, is such that we discuss and come up with an amicable position. And it is me on the floor, and I want to say that we support that position provided by our leaders. The only thing, Honorable Speaker, that I want to put to the House is that when we move from this position to go and elect our chairs and vice chairs, I would urge the House, and particularly the ruling coalition, that you live by the word of His Excellency the President, who stated that there's lots of progress that has been made by women in this country, and we want to see that demonstrated when we elect chairmen and vice chairs of committees. Honorable Speaker, that was emphasized by the President in his speech about the progress of women, and we want to see women chairs and women vice chairs. Otherwise, I support the list fully.
As I call the mover now to reply this motion, you can see there are no other much interest. Honorable senators, you made some determination that we are joining this house at 5:30 p.m. And now it is exactly 5 minutes to 5:30. And I must read all this list. Proceed.
Mr. Speaker, thank you to colleagues who contributed. I know there are many colleagues who still want to speak on this issue of committees. But remember, on Tuesday, we have a motion, a similar motion, on membership to committees of the sessional committees. So I want to believe our colleagues will have a chance. So I plead with you, because we must conclude this business by 5:30, allow us to conclude. Thank you, colleague senators, for your indulgence. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I beg to move.
Honorable Senators, I put the question that pursuant to Standing Orders 199 and 228 and the fourth schedule of the Standing Orders, the Senate approves the distant senators nominated by the Senate Business Committee to serve in standing committees of the Senate. A Committee on Agriculture, Livestock and Fisheries. Senators James Murango, Alexander Mundigi, Matinga Wahome, Aran Chesang, Maureen Tabida, Moses Kajwang, Daniel Manzo, Enoch Wabua, Beth Karunda. B. Devolution and Intergovernmental Relations. Senators Sheikh Mohammed, Roserinda Soipan, Peris Tobiko, George Mugai Bogwa, Mohamed Said, Oburu Oginga, Dr. Richard Moima, Ezena Lemaletian, Catherine Muma. C. Education. Senators Joseph Nyutu, Ferris Tobiko, Lenku Olekanar, James Kamau, John Kenyan Deritu, Professor Margaret Kamar, Agnes Modama, Joseph Kamau, Jonas Mwaruma. Yeah, final. Energy, D. Senators Wamatinga Wahome, Veronica Duati, Danson Mongatana, Sheikh Mohamed, Dr. Boni Karware, Rendamo Lekina, Dr. Buru Oginga, James Remenen, Edwin Watenya Sifuna. E. Finance and Budget, Senator Zali Ibrahim, Maureen Tabitha, Dr. Boni Karwale, Joyce Chepkoech, Tabitha Karanja, Richard Onyonka, Shakira Mohamed, Andy Okech, Mohamed Difaki. F. Health, Senators Jackson Mandagol, Mariam Omar, Rafael Chimela, Joseph Nyutu, Roserida Soipan, Eric Okongo Omogeni, Rendamo Lekina, Abdu Mohamed, Haminda Kibwana. G. Information, Communication and Technology, Senators Aran Kiprotich, Girodia Magoma, Milaj Abdullahi, Kalenjeri, Samson Kiprotich, Bo Isa Juma, Shakil Abdara, Beatrice Akinyi, Godfrey Atieno. Justice, Legal Affairs and Human Rights. Senators Wakil Hilary Kiprotich, Rafael Chimela, Samson Kiprotich, Veronica Duati, William Cheptumo, Fatuma Danduro, Aminda Kibwana, Andrew Omtata, Catherine Muma. Labor and Social Welfare. Senators Julius Mulgo, George Mungai, Kalen Nyamu, Alexander Munyi Mudigi, Milaj Abdullahi, Mohamed Faki, Eric Okongo Mugeni, Retired Justice Stewart Mazayo, Kristo Kagei Asige. J. Land, Environment and Natural Resources. Senators John Medhu, Dr. Steve Reregwe, William Cheptumo, Wamatinga Wahome, Mariam Sheikh, Isa Jumaboy, Jonas Maruma, Agnes Mudama, Beatrice Soyomo. K. National Cohesion, Equal Opportunity and Regional Integration. Senators Mohamed Chute, Joyce Chepkoech, Julius Mwenda, Gloria Magoma, Rafael Chimela, Mbete Baturi, Joseph Kamau, James Romenen, Beth Sengo. L. National Security, Defense and Foreign Relations. Senators William Cheptumo, Kalen Nyamu, Julius Mulgo, Lenku Olekanar, George Mbugwa, Fatuma Duro, Joseph Kamau, Tom Ojenda, Abdu Haji. M. Loans, Transportation and Housing. Paul Dhangwa, Peris Tobiko, John Nderitu, Mohamed Chute, and Dr. Steve Litubesi, Enoch Buambua, Moses Kajwang, Justice Mazayo, Edwin Sifuna. N. Trade, Industrialization and Tourism. Lenku Olekanar, Senators Lenku Olekanar, Onesimus Kipchumba, Jackson Kiplagat, Tabitha Karanja, Paul Dhangwa, Kristo Kegei Asige, Andrew Omtata, Betty Montet, Ezena M. Lemetian. With as many as that opinion say aye, aye. Will as many of the contrary opinion say nay? Yeah. Okay, proceed. Take your seats. I want to give direction on the way forward. There is a communication on election of chairpersons and vice chairpersons of select committees. Honorable Senators, as you are aware, in accordance with the Senate standing orders and following the approval of the House of the Senators to serve in committees, select committees are now ready to start their respective legislative business. Honorable Senators, pursuant to standing order 203 on conduct of elections, this is to inform you that the clerk of the Senate has appointed Monday, 17th October 2022 to Wednesday, 19th October 2022, as the dates for the conduct of elections of the chairpersons and vice chairpersons of the following committees. The Standing Committee on Agriculture, Livestock and Fisheries. 2, Standing Committee on Devolution and Intergovernmental Relations. 3, the Standing Committee on Education. 4, the Standing Committee on Energy. 5, the Standing Committee on Finance and Budget. 6, the Standing Committee on Health. 7, the Standing Committee on Information, Communication and Technology. 8, the Standing Committee on Justice, Legal Affairs and Human Rights. 9, the Standing Committee on Labor and Social Affairs. 10, the Standing Committee on Land, Environment and Natural Resources. 11, the Standing Committee on National Cohesion, Equal Opportunity and Regional Integration. 12, the Standing Committee on National Security, Defense and Foreign Relations. 13, the Standing Committee on Loans, Transportation and Housing. And the last one, 14, the Standing Committee on Trade, Industrialization and Tourism. Honorable Senators, further information on the venue and time of the elections shall be communicated to the members of the same committees. Senators are urged to attend these important meetings so as to enable the respective committees to commence their work in the 13th Parliament. I thank you. Now I call Senator Iroba to move his motion of adjournment.
Mr. Speaker, sir, I beg to move the motion that pursuant to Standing Order number 37, the Senate do adjourn to discuss the definite matter of national importance, namely the drought situation in the country. Mr. Speaker, sir, the ASAL counties are faced with devastating drought situation. That situation has affected almost all the counties except 3 in the 23 ASAL counties. 11 out of these ASAL counties are in alarm stage or phase of drought, and the remaining 9 are in alert stage of drought. Mr. Speaker, sir, having been a governor for the last 10 years, I would like to state that our county governments are ill-resourced and ill-prepared to deal with catastrophes of such magnitude as the devastating drought situation in the country right now. Mr. Speaker, sir, drought is a recurring phenomenon globally, and it is a hidden global crisis that is worse than pandemic such as COVID-19 and other pandemics that has happened. And unfortunately, this crisis has not been mainstreamed or considered for the magnitude of devastation that it is causing across the globe. Mr. Speaker, sir, countries far much developed than our country, Kenya, have reported, countries in China have reported dams and rivers whose bottom has never been seen because of the water content in those rivers having dried up. Just most recently, it has been reported, Mr. Speaker, sir, that the streams feeding most dams and lakes like Lake Naivasha has dried, and the lakes are losing 0.5 meters of water literally every week. The extensive direct and indirect impact of drought has never been properly quantified by our country. The situation in Kenya's arid and semi-arid lands, which make up 89% of the landmass of this country and houses 38% of the population of Kenya. These regions also house 90% of the wildlife that is bringing in about 12% of, contributing 12% to our GDP. The ASAL counties also host 70% of the livestock wealth of this country, and as such is estimated that over 70 billion worth of livestock wealth. Mr. Speaker, sir, the ASALs have been hit the hardest, with the former president announcing or declaring drought a national disaster in September of 2021. Before that declaration, the counties in the ASALs have been dealing with drought because on average about 4 successive rainy seasons have failed in the ASALs. And while maybe the counties that are not ASALs may not feel the immediate impact, but what is happening right now can very easily make it its way to other regions if not capped. Whereas ASAL counties have been prone to droughts over the years, in the last 20 years, the period between droughts have been on average reported between 5 to 10 years. However, in the last few years, the last 10 years to be precise, that period have reduced to 2 to 3 years. And where we stand right now, the ASAL counties, most of them have had, out of 12 successive rainy seasons, we've had less than adequate or suppressed rains in the ASALs. The situation has been made worse by the locust invasion that just took place, which has severely impacted on the capacities of these ASAL counties, as if that was not enough.
Give Senator over the mic, kind.
Your mic has gone off.
Sorry.
You're fine.
Okay. Thank you. Mr. Speaker, sir, as I say, while the ASALs have historically been suffering periodic drought, but over the last, the droughts between 1969 to almost 2020 has been averaging between 5 to 10 years. But over the last 10 years, the situation has changed. And now, every 2 to 3 years, we are suffering this drought situation.
Are you a holder of unclaimed financial assets? Take advantage of the Finance Act 2022 moratorium on penalties and interest.